Yep, looks good.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to start recording us right now.
Great. Look at those blue headphones.
Yes, it's my signature. So I was wondering if you were going to be on your treadmill this morning.
Always.
I know. Sitting is the new smoking. So that's good. Yes. So thank you for doing this morning. I'm really excited to talk with you, and I really appreciate you making the time to do this.
Happy to help.
And I know that my readers are going to love it, love it, love it. So I have a bunch of questions for you today, and I don't know how much time you have, but I'm going to pick your brain until you tell me that you have to go.
We have half an hour.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to fit as much as I can into this. So I want to start by talking quickly about your new book, How Not to Die.
What a great book. Look at that book.
It is fantastic. So this is your new book, How Not to Die. And in this book, you examine the top causes of premature death, including heart disease, various cancers, diabetes, and explain how nutritional and lifestyle intervention can trump prescription drugs and surgeries. Yay. Now, I love this book, and I have to thank you for writing it, first of all, because I know that nutritionfacts.org, you give a plethora of information, and it's so great to have everything in one book. So thank you.
I am so glad you appreciate it. I actually wasn't sure I was going to do the book at all. I was approached by a literary agent who said you have to do a book, and I said I don't got time to do a book.
Yeah.
And I said, look, everything's free online. Like, why do I need who's going to buy a book?
Mm-hmm.
But they said, "Okay, gotta write a book. And the publisher kept saying they donate more and more money to Nutrition Facts if I wrote the book. And so finally they made me an offer I couldn't refuse, or they made Nutrition Facts an offer I couldn't refuse. And so all proceeds, of course, go to keep the 501c3 nonprofit charity, nutritionfacts.org, alive and kicking.
Yay! Love it.
And
the best resource on the internet.
I mean, they gave me so much money that they gave them so much money that it was worth taking 8 months out of my life to write the book. And I'm so glad I did. I had no idea that it would do so well. Who reads books these days?
A lot of people, apparently. This is a good thing. This is great. Well, I think that everybody should be required to read it in schools and medical schools, and all of my Clean Food Dirty Girl people, they have to read it. I'm going to require it for them to read it. So that's great. And now, so I'm wondering, how many studies did you pick apart in order to be able to put this thing together?
I cite in the back, there are 3,000 citations. And so that gives you a sense. Right. Of course, I went through many more, and those are just the one. So, it probably went through about 10 times that many to pick. That's typically every year. So in the past few years, there's been about 12,000 studies published on human nutrition. Then I whittled that down to like 1,200 or so that I download and characterize and read. And then that is kind of becomes about 110 videos or so. So I can do new videos every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, year round. But that's changed. There's actually been an exponential increase in the number of articles published. So last year there were so far. Yeah, so there were 33,000 last year. So 33,000. So we went from 12,000 all of a sudden 33,000. That's a lot.
Yeah.
So already my 2016 batch of articles that I thought were so important to actually take a deep dive into, I already have 9,000. And look, it's May.
Right.
9,000 articles. So that's actually one of the reasons why we have 3 open positions. So we have 3 new positions open at Nutrition Facts. You can wait. They're full-time remote positions. You can be done anywhere in the world. We need good people on board because we need to, there's just so much out there. I need to be in the library. I don't have
Yeah.
time to be posting to Facebook. So we need someone to post to Facebook for me. So that's a
Right.
social media director. We also have a volunteer director and development director. 3 open positions. Hopefully, maybe someone listening to this
Yeah.
will apply.
Yeah, there you go. And that's a great sign that there's more studies being done on human nutrition. That's fantastic. So I'm wondering then, with everything that you've read, and I know that you go over this in the book, but for my readers, my audience, my listeners who aren't familiar with you, after reading all of these studies, what is your food philosophy?
My food philosophy. My food philosophy is that we should make decisions about important things in life, like the health of ourselves and our family, based on the best available balance of evidence. So I'm not interested in beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not interested in, people. I mean, look, if if you want to deciding on what brand of toothpaste or what new music to listen to, then okay, then opinions play a role, right? But when it comes
Uh-huh.
to the science, no, there's just the
Right.
science. I mean, and
Yeah.
so people say, well, what do you think about this? I say, I have no position on that. I can tell you what the science says about that. I can tell you what the best available balance of evidence says about that.
Uh-huh.
And so that what I see my role. It's not like the Dr. Greger diet. It's
Sure.
the century of best available balance of evidence diet, and what that shows is that the healthiest diet is one that is centered around whole plant foods, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, rich beans, split peas,
Yeah.
chickpeas, and lentils, nuts and seeds, herbs and spices, mushrooms, basically real food that grows out of the ground. Those are the healthiest choices to make.
Yep. That's what I always say. So that's great. And you really do. I mean, this is a science-based approach, but I also really admire you because this is based off from studies, and you look at specific things and specific studies, but you also are able to keep a really good view on the bigger picture without getting bogged down in the specifics of certain superfoods or doing this one thing. So I really appreciate your approach, and it's really helped me with what I do and the information that I put out there and just my point of view, because I think so often people get bogged down in the minutia of it, and they hear that acai berries and best thing, so they're going to eat only that for the next week. So I appreciate your holistic approach while focusing on this specific. So I think you do a fantastic job.
Well, it's not just me. I've got 14 researchers that are helping me, slog through all this.
Yes, you cannot
And
do
so,
this
but
alone. I get
right.
it.
So, I mean, I mean, you can see how if it's just one person, then you see some cool study about some cool food, but you really have to put that one study in the context of all the other studies that have ever been done on that topic, to really get a sense, is this some outlier? Is this the only study that's ever been shown that? And there's other studies, better studies showing the opposite. I mean, so that's why one study, even if it's a good study, even if it's not funded by an entity that has a conflict of interest, you still have to really see, well, wait a second, where does this fit in the overall picture, the overall balance of evidence? And that's not easy to do. I mean, that's a full-time job.
Clearly.
Thankfully, it's my full-time job.
Yes, thankfully it is. And we're going to leave that to you and keep telling us the information. So, okay, now I have some questions, and I'm just going, and then I have some questions that I want to ask, and then I have some questions that my readers wanted me to ask you. So I will see how many we can get to. We're already 8 minutes in. I can't even believe it. All right. So I'm going to start with this one. So when people switch from eating a standard American diet to eating a diet full of plant foods, they go from eating a low fiber diet to a really high fiber diet. So this switch can make people bloated and gassy and mess with their digestion for a bit, especially in the beginning. And I work with a lot of people who are new to this way of eating, and they get, these digestive issues that are, frankly embarrassing, and, they want them gone. And I tell them to be patient and your body will adjust. So I'm wondering, for you and what you've seen and what you've studied, how long do you think that typically takes to the body to digest to all of this fiber?
Well, so I think probably the best thing you can do is encourage people to start slow. I mean, take it slow. and allow their digestive system to adapt. I mean, you realize, I mean, the gut so basically most of these symptoms you're talking about have to do with our gut flora, our microbiome, these trillions of so-called good bacteria, symbiotic bacteria living in our gut.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you have been eating burgers and milkshakes your whole lives, then you have burger and milkshake eating bacteria. You foster the growth of whatever you eat.
Mm-hmm.
You foster the growth of whatever bacteria you eat. You are what you eat. Essentially, they are what you eat. And
Right.
so, unfortunately, those bacteria produce all sorts of bad things. So, for example, the carnitine in red meat turns into, the bacteria that eat meat in our colon, eat these meat compounds, produce something called trimethylamine, which is oxidized by the liver, causes all sorts of bad things. Same thing with choline, found in seafood and dairy and eggs in particular. We eat these kind of foods. And we foster the growth of the bacteria that eat
Mm-hmm.
these foods. They have all sorts of bad consequences. What we want are bacteria that produce these wonderful compounds called short-chain fatty acids like butyrate that are reabsorbed back into the body, have all sorts of amazing effects, can improve immunity, may have mental health effects, all sorts of wonderful things.
Yeah.
But
Lots of good stuff.
you're only going to have fiber-eating bacteria. So the bacteria that produce these wonderful compounds produce it from eating fiber and resistant starch. These are only found in whole plant foods in abundance. We don't eat these foods. We're not fostering the growth of these good bacteria, but it doesn't switch overnight.
Right.
Right. I mean, it can take weeks for there's these poor little fiber eating bacteria are stuck in the back of the bus somewhere in the colon,
Right.
starving to death because you're not eating hardly any fiber. But all of a sudden you start eating fiber, and they're the ones that grow, and all the kind of meat eating bacteria die off because they're starving them. And so all these good bacteria start growing. They take over the colon. Now this takes a while, but then you have the good fiber-eating bacteria, the resistant starch-eating bacteria. They produce all these wonderful things, heals the gut, it provides all these wonderful things, reduces appetite, all sorts of great things. I mean, we evolved for millions of years eating more than 100 grams of fiber a day. That's massive. Americans only eat about 15, 20 grams a day. And so but our whole physiology, our whole digestion is tuned to eat massive amounts of whole plant foods, but because it involves a third party, these gut bacteria, you need to allow these time for these gut bacteria to
do their job and switch over.
So, adding a half cup of chickpeas or tofu or lentils, these are kind of low gas forming foods. Studies show that, look, a lot of people actually nothing happens and they don't feel any different and just benefit. And then they can keep ramping up. Others, for about 2-week period, they have increased bloating, gas, things like this. But then again, then the good bacteria, and then they report after 2 weeks, they report basically no more symptoms than they had before, compared to a controlled diet, which I think was eating raw carrots or something. So, I encourage people to stick to it. I think it's good advice. Stick to it. And you could also encourage people to start slow.
Okay, that's great advice. And that's really good for them to know now what is actually happening and everything that's going on inside of them that are creating these things. So that's fantastic. So, all right, I was at the VA hospital yesterday with my godfather, and every time I'm in a hospital, I'm reminded of how bad shape people are in. And I want to give every single one of them a copy of your book. I should have brought a lot of them with me. But if somebody is just coming off the standard American diet and they come to you, what's the first thing that you tell them?
I talk to them about, where they are in life and what kind of control they have over their food system. Look, if you're in a hospital, you may have very little control over your food. If you're a teen and you're living at home, you may have very little control over your food situation. But if you actually have control, if there aren't issues you're wrestling with fellow family, et cetera, and you really can eat healthy, then, I encourage people there's lots of things they can do. If I have very little time with them, I encourage them to jump on the 21daykickstart.org. It's a physician's committee for responsible medicine, has this wonderful free program, first of every month. They do this 3-week program. You'd all do it as a group. Hundreds of thousands of people have already done it. Bunch of different languages. That's where you get daily tips and advice and recipes. And you all do it as a group and answer questions for each other. And it's really a phenomenal And so, look, if I have 5 seconds with a patient, I can, pass along, 21daykickstart.org. If I have more time, then I encourage people to start crowding out bad foods from their diet by adding new foods. So rather than feeling deprived, they're like, I say, look, I want you to eat a salad every day. This is why I want you to eat this much fruit every day.
That's fantastic.
And then they're adding stuff to their diet, finding new things that they like. Their taste buds start to change. And then they just look, they're full. They just don't have room for some of this other stuff. Easy tweaks like switching beverage choice. People are drinking soda. One little simple tweak can, eliminate, hundreds of empty calories and all sorts of bad things like phosphate additives. So get rid of the worst of the worst if you're going to get rid of anything, and that would be processed meat, trans fat, soda. If you're anything going to add to one's diet, well, look, if you're going to add more fruit, might as well add the healthiest fruits, berries. Might as well add the healthiest vegetables, greens. So greens, beans, berries, probably the first 3 foods that I start trying to squeeze into people's diets. Some people are ready to go all the way. Some people just had a horrible diagnosis. They just got diagnosed with cancer. They just got diagnosed with heart disease. And they really want to jump, all the way in. And, we can work with that. But the important thing is it's sustainable, right? Diets don't work by definition because by definition, you go on a diet, you go off a diet. This is a lifestyle. Right. You have to enjoy it. You will, for the first, you can do anything for a couple of days, eat some nasty diet shake or whatever, right? But unless you really enjoy it, unless you, feel nourished by it, you're not going to stay this way for the rest of your life. And that's really what matters in terms of chronic disease prevention and reversal.
And it has to be manageable for them. So that is fantastic advice. Wonderful. And I think that I've given that same advice before. So let's see. What I'm gonna pick and choose here the ones that I want to ask the most. So I want to talk about soy for a minute because I know that this is a topic that just isn't going away, and I want to know just briefly, where did the soy is bad stigma come from, and what do you say to people who are literally afraid to eat soy, even things like edamame and tofu and tempeh?
There's this Western Price Foundation, this group that's put out a lot of kind of anti-soy propaganda. There may be other sources. There may have been earlier sources. I'm not sure. I don't stay on top of the lay literature. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's in Time magazine. I don't know what's on the blogs this week, but I can tell you what's in the medical literature. And there's this remarkable consistency about the benefits of all legumes, beans, split peas, chickpeas, and lentils, including soybeans, particularly whole soy foods. You'll look on the internet and it'll say, they have phytoestrogen. So if you have, breast cancer, you want to stay away from soy if you're worried about breast cancer. Okay, that's what we have science for. Let's say, okay, you proposed kind of this thought. All right, well, let's see what the science says. Well, there have been 5 studies done so far on breast cancer survivors involving more than 11,000 women with breast cancer, starting in 2008. And every single one of those studies, every single one, all were in one direction. And that is, put them all together, women that eat soy compared to the women that don't, breast cancer survivors that eat soy, they live longer. They have improved survival. They have lower risk of the cancer coming back, cancer recurrence rates, 5 out of 5. It's right. I mean, and
100%.
And so if you look at these, if the blog actually says anything, actually cites something, they'll cite some decades old animal study, like it's what happened with hamster breast cancer or something. And look, I'm not a veterinarian. I'm like a veterinarian that only knows one species. I'm a very limited veterinarian. I can tell you what to feed people. I don't know what. And so should you feed tofu to your pet hamster? I don't know. You got to ask your pet. But if you're interested in human health, these studies are right there. PubMed.gov. That's the National Library of Medicine database, largest medical library in the world. Look it up. I mean, that's, and again, it's not someone saying my brand of toothpaste is better. Check it out, 5 stars.
Right.
It's someone saying you should do this because I think that could actually hurt you. Yeah. I mean, it's like having someone saying, here, put your hand in a fire. It's great. Believe me.
It does make sense. Yeah. Yeah. So listen to the science. So that's fantastic. I like it, and we're going to leave it at that. Um, all right. So, in your estimation, what are the biggest dangers of, and in the research that you found, what are the biggest dangers of following a paleo diet?
Well, it depends what you mean by paleo diet. I mean, if you actually there was a study published that just went online and asked people to send in dietary records, people that consider themselves paleo eaters, and the largest difference between paleo eaters and standard American diet eaters, what was the big difference? They ate more vegetables. They report eating more vegetables. Awesome, right? I mean, if your idea of paleo is to eat less donuts and more broccoli, go for it, right? That's great. And so they actually were not eating, for example, more meat than the average person. Like you'd think, because why? Because the average person eats way too much meat, right? So, I mean, okay. But so instead of like, I mean, you can go to specific, you can ask specific. So, what about, for example, the role of meat in the diet, right? So the paleo advocates are big advocates of meat, grass-fed meat, wild meat, that kind of stuff. That's based on this Paleolithic period, which goes back 2 million years, the Stone Age period when we finally had these stone tools where we could bring down animals. All right. But we divert. So, and they say, look, we've evolved last 2 million years. Our bodies became accustomed to meat eating. We need meat. Okay, I see where you're going with this, but wait a second. We did not appear on this earth 2 million years ago. We last split with our last common great ape ancestor 20 million years ago. So 2 million is just the last 10% of our evolution. Wait a second. What about the first 90% of our evolution? When our biochemistry, our digestive physiology, everything was being created, 90%, what were we eating? We were eating what our other great ape ancestors were eating. And current great ape cousins were eating plant-based diets, 97% plus plant-based diets. Lots of fruits and leaves and flowers. I mean, that's why, for example, we as a human species lost the ability to create vitamin C. We actually have the gene that creates vitamin C in our body, but our body junked it because why waste energy making vitamin C when we're eating vitamin C all day long? So if you look at other highly herbivorous species, fruit bats and guinea pigs, they don't make vitamin C either. Why? What's the point, right?
They're getting it through plants, right?
Right. Most animals, however, make their own vitamin C, right? You don't have to feed vitamin C. You don't have to give your cats oranges because your cat makes all the vitamin C they want. They have to because they're not eating plant-rich diets, right? I mean, but our bodies, we ate you can look at fossilized Paleolithic feces. We were eating 105 grams of fiber a day. Massive quantities of plant foods, hundreds of milligrams of vitamin C every day, and all the whole plant foods we were eating. So, I mean, if someone really wanted to eat kind of an ancestral diet, they would just be eating massive quantities of plants and some bugs thrown in.
Okay, there you go. So people just aren't going back far enough, I guess. All right, so let's see what I have now. I'm wondering if, let's see, peripheral neuropathy. Okay, so I watched your video recently where the studies show that neuropathy can actually be cured. And I'm wondering, so there's two types of neuropathy, right? There's the type that is painful, and then there's the type that is numbing. Is it common to have one of those and not the other, or do those typically both come in the same package?
Well, so there's many, many different types of neuropathy, and depends on the cause. So we're talking about diabetic neuropathy here, and indeed most cases of diabetic neuropathy are just kind of these what are called paresthesias, numbness, tingling, but there are a subcategory of people that suffer neuropathy where it's this horrible burning pain. Yeah. It can be a burning, stabbing pain. The sensation is very resistant to treatment. So, doctors try opiates and antidepressants and everything but it's a very frustrating condition for both doctor and patient. This horrible pain, they can't get rid of. And it's because their nerves are being damaged. Their nerves are on fire. And so people suffer for years, suffer from decades from this horrible disease until someone came along and said, let's put these people on a plant-based diet. They put kind of the worst of the worst, this painful diabetic neuropathy. put them on a plant-based diet, and saw this miraculous within days.
Amazing within
So people
days,
for decades suffering like this, within days, their pain went away and the conditions continued to improve. Some of the numbness went away too. I mean, this is remarkable. It should have made front page headlines all around the world, but who's going to pay for it? There's no press release. There's no corporate budget driving its promotion. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, so we've known that plant-based diet, whole food plant-based diet can prevent diabetes, can stop reverse type 2 diabetes. But here we are, even late in the game, being able to reverse some of the late stage complications of diabetes, like diabetic vision loss, like diabetic kidney failure, like diabetic neuropathy. That's really remarkable.
It is really remarkable, especially when doctors, the only thing that they do is push antidepressants. That's crazy, and just try to have them live with it. It's amazing. I was really impressed with that study, and it gives people a lot of hope. And it's another one of those things that people just need to know, need to be informed about.
Right, and the doctors need to as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
They just don't know the power. I mean, they just graduated without this powerful tool in their medical toolbox. But that's why I created nutritionfacts.org.
All right, so I have a couple questions from my readers, so I'm going to get to as many of those as I can. All right, so I have someone asked, what is your take on alcohol, or what does science say about alcohol?
There we go. The correct question. Good. I'm glad you asked.
And does the science say that drinking a glass of wine a day is health promoting?
Okay, so alcohol is cancer causing. Alcohol is carcinogenic. It's a breast carcinogen. When it hits our tongue, these little bacteria on our tongue turn alcohol into something called acetaldehyde, which is a carcinogen, increase our risk of oral cancer all the way down our digestive tract, breast cancer, on down the list, because it's created this carcinogen. Now, red wine is more than just alcohol. It actually has these components found in grape skins. Basically, white wine, red wine can actually be from the same grapes, but they just don't use the skins in the production. Grape skins actually have a compound called as an aromatase inhibitor, an estrogen synthase inhibitor. Basically, it cripples the enzyme that breast cancer uses to fuel their own growth with estrogen. And so that's why the only kind of alcoholic beverage not associated with breast cancer risk is red wine. So if you're going to drink alcohol, red wine would be the best bet, because the benefits appear to kind of cancel out, not outweigh, but cancel out the negative effects of the alcohol. But wait a second. What about getting the benefits without the risk by eating grapes?
Yeah.
Go out there, eat some Concord grapes, get the best of both worlds. But if you're going to do alcohol, red wine's the way to go.
All right. There you go. Well, I quit drinking a year ago, so just as well, stick to those regular grapes. All right. Here's one. What is your take? What does the science say on iodine supplementation? And do you believe people can cure their relatively low thyroid issues without taking medication?
Iodine supplementation is critical for pregnant women. So the current recommendation of the endocrine society is that all pregnant women should supplement their diet, which I believe 150 micrograms of iodine a day. Now, everyone, so iodine is an essential nutrient. Everyone has to get it. It depends what the iodine content of the soil from which plant foods are being grown. And so, often you don't know. I encourage people to develop a taste for sea vegetables, seaweed. So, for example, these like nori sheets you can chew on as snacks. There's a bunch of different kind of nori-based snacks on the market. You can get something called dulse, which is this kind of purple powder that you can sprinkle on stuff. It's not very seaweedy for people that don't like that taste. Packed with iodine, packed with trace minerals. The only two seaweeds I encourage people to stay away from is tzatziki, which has too much arsenic, and kelp, which actually has too much iodine. You can get kind of an iodine overload. So if your hypothyroidism, if your underactive thyroid gland is because you're not getting enough iodine, then indeed you can cure it, reverse it completely by getting enough iodine. Ideally from whole food sources, though, you can take iodine supplements if you want. If you do use salt, use iodized salt, not the sea salt or crazy natural salt, but iodized salt. But of course, you should not use salt at all. Should not add salt to your foods. If, however, your thyroid dysfunction is caused by an autoimmune disease or a whole bunch of other factors, there may be nothing diet can do.
There you have it. Okay, so, and it looks like we're at 29 minutes already. That
All
was
right.
way too fast. So I just have one last thing. Is there any specific foods that you eat every single day?
Dark green leafy vegetables. Here's my kale smoothie.
All right.
Dark vegetables. Mm. Greens. Greens. Good. Not just every day. I try to eat them every meal. So this is my greens for breakfast.
Awesome. Well, you heard it from the doctor yourself, and I want to thank you again for taking time out of your really, really busy day. And thank you again for writing this book. It's a life changer, a game changer. And thanks for chatting. You do great work.
Keep up the good work yourself.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.